Hey guys, welcome to another lecture in the series of lectures about critical approaches to literature. And I started opening up the Platonic dilemma in the last lecture, and I will continue with that. Um, I just want to say that if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below, because I understand that this is a very technical and complicated concept to grasp. And also, the thing with it is that even or if or when you're able to grasp this concept, you need to be able to apply it in um, your reading, everyday approach to reading, all of that stuff. So that can get that's not technically easy to master, right? When you pick a book to read, it's not technically easy that you can instantly start, um, that you can instantly get into the Platonic dilemma, ask yourself the major critical questions, all of that stuff. That's not. So that's why um, feel free to ask any questions, and please keep on with the tasks, especially in this series of lecture. I think that being able to understand critical approaches to literature will either way on your own also help you understand any text way better. So just remember that, please. Okay. Now within the Platonic dilemma, in this lecture, I'm going to be opening up the major critical questions which you need to ask yourself, which you need to know, which you need to know how to form to be able to get into this headspace of the Platonic dilemma. Very importantly. Um, for example, you can ask what a certain piece of work or literature does, um, which is of course to which of course means to define its function and value at the same time. Uh, Not define its value, but like suggest its value, right? For example, if you were to read Six Young Men by Ted Hughes, you can probably come up with one explanation that the Six Young Men by Ted Hughes is his way of trying to help the world understand the futility of war, because he was also a first-hand witness to the war, and he may have lost six young friends, um, or that his wife he saw suffer because of the effects of war, or because of being a witness to war. So that's why, he may have written it from that perspective, that people suffer, like subject of war are always people. So in that sense, and uh, and in developing critical questions to be able to get into this headspace of the Platonic dilemma, you need to understand that these questions need to be normative rather than descriptive. The answers to them can be descriptive, yes, but these questions need to be very normative. Um, and these questions will help you discover then how to distinguish the good from the less good, and even perhaps the bad amongst literary works. Because when you're trying to get into this whole headspace of critically approaching a piece of work or trying to understand it, you need to be able to cross-refer it, right? For example, now I know it will probably sound funny, but say somebody is no, actually it won't sound funny, but say in an exam you're given something like you're given something like um, 50 Shades of Grey to deliberate upon and critically approach it in terms of how it is a story that's reoccurring in terms of even its writing. Over there, you will have to, of course, cross-refer it, right, to a Twilight, to a Wuthering Heights, where it actually spines from, where it actually trickles down from. So, for that uh, process to happen, you need to you need to ask yourself normative questions rather than descriptive questions. Um, in terms of descriptive questions, the thing is that, of course, it's not easy, it's not difficult to create descriptive questions or descriptive critical questions, but the problem will be that in creating descriptive critical questions, because your answer needs to be descriptive when trying to answer that question, um, the the special techniques of demonstration uh, and analysis to imply a value of judgment to that piece of work might then not be entirely possible, because you will because either way, when we say literature expansive, it's very expansive, right? um, Everything's really subjective. um, Everything has multiple implications. um, Everything has a lot of different possible answers. So when you're talking about developing any of these major critical questions, you need to really know that that those questions themselves cannot be descriptive. Those questions need to be very definitive. More than definitive, I would say normative. Like, you need to know that, for example, you can't be like, take the example of Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Your question can't be that how does this book helps people develop care and compassion along with love for animals, um, explain in blah blah blah. No. Your question has to be, what is the purpose, or what might have been the purpose of Black Beauty? That's about it. It has to be normative that way. It can't describe the piece of work. It can't describe its audience. Because your answer is already going to be full of those descriptions. Similarly, do you think Black Beauty delivers the impact it was written to deliver? A normative question, not a descriptive question. Because a descriptive question would have been, do you think that via a horse the writer was able to? No. Because when you're about to critically approach a piece of work, I'd wrap this lecture up and then I'll get into the get into like uh, furthermore get furthermore into this later on, but what was I about to say? Yeah, so when and if you're supposed to critically approach a piece of work, firstly, it can't be based on one read. That it cannot be. You need to know the work. You should have read it several times over. Um, and if not several times over, even if one time, you need to know the story. Excuse me. You need to know what that piece of work that you're going to be or you're trying to critically approach is. And then you go on to develop these normative questions rather than descriptive questions. Once you have these normative questions in place, once you know um, what you're supposed to be asking when it comes to being able to define the value of a piece of work, or when it comes to being able to define the impact that a piece of work delivers, then you get into the other details of it. And in being able to, I don't know if I'm being repetitive, because I myself am really confused in trying to explain this. Excuse me. Which is why I'm breaking this into several lectures, because as I'm trying to explain this, I understand how difficult it can be to understand critical approaches to literature and just about Platonic dilemma, and then what are the major critical questions that you need to ask yourself to be able to get into that headspace of a Platonic dilemma. But I hope it's clear that the difference between normative questions versus descriptive questions, and why must you ask normative questions, because your answer is either way going to be descriptive, and that way you can block your mind somewhere, because like in a story there is supposed to be some end to the story, right? Whatever it might be, there's some way that you block a story in the end, right? So that way there is some way that you need to block your thought process, because either way literature is very expansive, right? Everything's really vague, everything's really subjective. So with these critical questions, which is basically the major thing that I want people to understand as an objective or part of this lecture, is that with these with these normative questions that you're trying to develop in terms of your critical approach to literature, when trying to get into that Platonic headspace with a piece of literary work, they cannot be descriptive, because the answer is either way going to be expansive and descriptive. It has to be normative and defining in certain capacities. And then actually, yeah, I'll just continue with more stuff in the next lecture, because I think it's already 15 minutes long. I'll drop a task with what I've tried to explain in this lecture. Please do that so that you are able to go through the notes to be able to make sense of what all I just said, which I hope I was articulate with, but I get it can be really confusing, because I am feeling really nervous in trying to explain this. And and yeah, and just do the task, please, so that it's ingrained in your head what I have tried to explain. Just do the task so that at least for now you're able to understand the idea of major critical questions and why they need to be normative rather than descriptive. and then we'll move on to further explaining major critical questions to get into this headspace of the Platonic dilemma, so that you're able to critically approach a piece of work in literature in the next lecture. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also perhaps press the bell icon so that you can stay updated for whenever I drop another lecture. And yeah, this series is going to be, I think, a task and a half to deliver, because I know it's really complicated to understand critical approaches to literature. And the Platonic dilemma is one of the trickier aspects of it to grasp upon, and it can get also really what should I say, at some point of time it can seem like something too much, which I don't want it to, which is why with the notes I'm trying to break everything down really properly. So just refer to the notes, make sure you do the task, and see you soon.